The library at the Galactic Academy of Interspecies Relations was quiet, except for the soft hum of data terminals. Zarek sat alone at her study station, her 4 eyes blinking in sequence as she processed the information on her screen. Her blue skin shimmered under the soft lights as she leaned forward, antennae twitching with excitement. As a Centaurian exchange student, Zarek had always been fascinated by humans. Most of her classmates avoided the topic, considering humans dangerous and unpredictable. The common belief across the galaxy was simple. Humans had risen to power through fear and intimidation. Their rapid advancement from a single-planet species to a major galactic power in just 3 centuries was unprecedented. Humans rule through fear, her Professor Divrak had said during yesterday's lecture. Their military might keeps other species in line. This is why we study them, to understand the danger. But something about this explanation never satisfied Zarek. It seemed too simple for a species as complex as humans. Her thesis research on human expansion patterns had led her down unexpected paths, and today she had found something truly strange. This can't be right, she whispered to herself. On her screen was a partially declassified military report about the first contact war between humans and the Vorax Empire. According to official Academy teaching, humans had brutally crushed Vorax resistance, establishing their reputation as warriors to be feared. But the report showed something different. Zarek's fingers moved quickly over the interface, scanning for more information. Most files were still classified, but her student access had revealed enough to raise serious questions. She downloaded what she could and closed the terminal. The next day, Zarek approached her human mentor after class. Professor Alan Richards was one of only 3 human instructors at the academy. Most alien students avoided his classes, but Zarek had found him to be thoughtful and fair. Professor Richards, could I ask you something about the first contact? War? Zarek spoke softly as the other students filed out. The professor's eyebrows raised slightly. That's not exactly my area of expertise, Zarek. I teach cultural integration, not military history. But you're human, she insisted. And the records I found don't match what we're taught. Professor Richards glanced toward the door, then back at Zarek. Walk with me to my office. As they moved through the curved corridors of the academy, Zarek explained what she had found. The professor listened without comment, his face giving away nothing. When they reached his office, he closed the door and activated a privacy field. What you've stumbled upon is complicated, he said finally. History is often written to serve current political needs. But the truth matters, Zarek said. If the common understanding of humanity is wrong, then a lot of powerful people would be embarrassed, he finished for her. Look, I can't directly help with your research. That would be inappropriate. But if you're serious about pursuing this, I can grant you temporary access to some historical archives as part of an independent study. Professor Richards tapped a series of commands into his desk terminal. There. You now have Level 3 clearance for the Earth Historical Database. Use it wisely. Zarek's antennae quivered with excitement. Thank you, Professor. I didn't do this, he said firmly. And if anyone asks, you're researching human cultural adaptation to interspecies diplomacy. Understood? She nodded and left, quickly, eager to begin. The Earth Historical Database was vast, containing records from humanity's earliest days of space exploration to the present. Zarek spent days filtering through information, focusing on the first contact war with the Vorax Empire. The truth was astonishing. Humans had indeed achieved tactical superiority over the Vorax, surrounding their homeworld with an overwhelming fleet. But just when victory was certain, they had pulled back. The footage showed human ships withdrawing from Vorax space after securing only minor concessions and establishing borders. Most shocking was the recording of Captain Samantha Hayes of the human starship Constellation, addressing her crew after the decision to withdraw. We came here to establish our right to exist, not to destroy another civilization, the captain said in the recording. We've proven our strength. Now we prove our wisdom by offering peace. The Vorax will remember that we could have ended them, but chose not to. That is the true power humanity brings to the stars. Zarek watched the recording 3 times, trying to understand. This directly contradicted everything she had been taught. According to Academy history, the Voraks surrendered because they feared human brutality. But the evidence suggested the Voraks surrendered because humans showed mercy when they had no reason to do so. After 2 weeks of intensive research, Zarek had compiled enough evidence to be certain. The common narrative about humanity was, at minimum, incomplete. She requested another meeting with Professor Richards. "I've found more than I expected," she told him when they met in a quiet corner of the Academy gardens. The Voraks War, the Meridian Crisis, the Epsilon Incident, all of them show the same pattern. Humans achieve military superiority and then offer terms that preserve their opponent's dignity and independence. Professor Richards nodded slowly. "And what conclusion do you draw from this?" "That humanity didn't rise to prominence through fear," Zarek said. "You rose through calculated mercy. But why would the Academy teach us differently? Why would the galaxy believe humans rule through intimidation when the evidence suggests otherwise?" "Perhaps," the professor said carefully, "some find it easier to obey out of fear than to accept that they were shown mercy. Pride is universal across species, after all." Zarek's antennae drooped slightly as she considered this. "My people have always feared humans. But if this is true, we've been afraid for the wrong reasons." "The truly frightening thing about humans," Richard said with a small smile, "isn't that we might destroy you. It's that we might forgive you when we have every right not to. That creates a different kind of debt, one harder to dismiss." He stood up and looked around to ensure they were still alone. "If you want to continue this research, and I can see you do, you should look into the Meridian Crisis next. The standard account is particularly creative." As Zarek watched him walk away, she felt both excitement and unease. She had come to the Academy to study humanity, believing she understood what made them dangerous. Now she realized the truth might be far more complex and far more interesting. She returned to the library, her mind racing with questions. If humans ruled not through fear but through strategic mercy, what did that mean for the balance of power in the galaxy? And why would so many species, including her own, prefer the narrative of human cruelty to the reality of human restraint? With new determination, Zarek began searching the database for records of the Meridian Crisis, unaware that her research had already triggered security alerts within the Academy system. Zarek moved carefully through the Academy archives, her blue skin almost glowing in the dim light. The section on the Meridian Crisis was tucked away in a corner, rarely visited by students. She had skipped her morning classes to ensure she would not be disturbed. The Meridian Crisis was a central part of modern galactic history. Every student at the Academy knew the basic facts. 3 human colonies in the Meridian system were destroyed by the Arachnid Collective, a highly advanced insectoid species. Humans retaliated with such overwhelming force that the arachnids surrendered rather than face extinction. It was taught as the perfect example of why species feared humans. Cross them once and they would crush you completely. But after what Zarek had discovered about the First Contact War, she suspected there was more to the story. Her suspicions were confirmed when she accessed the classified files. The footage showed the devastation of the human colonies, millions dead, 3 planets rendered uninhabitable. The human response was indeed swift and powerful. Their fleet, led by Admiral Christopher Bennett, pushed deep into Arachnid territory, destroying military installations and disabling defense systems. But what happened next didn't match the official narrative at all. Zarek found a recorded communication between Admiral Bennett and the Human Leadership Council. Their faces were grim as they discussed the next steps of the campaign. "We have them cornered," the Admiral reported. "The bioweapon is ready for deployment. One release in their central hive worlds would collapse their entire species within days." An older woman on the council spoke up. "And is there any evidence that the attack on our colonies was ordered by their central government? Or was it a rogue military faction as their representatives claim?" "Intelligence suggests it was indeed a military coup," the Admiral admitted. The civilian leadership was apparently unaware until after the attack. Then we target their military capabilities only, another council member said firmly. We don't punish an entire species for the actions of a faction. Admiral Bennett nodded. With respect, 3 million humans are dead. And how many million arachnids would die if we deploy the bioweapon? The woman countered. We're better than that, Admiral. Disable their fleet, secure their military installations, but leave their civilian populations and government intact. Zarak sat back, stunned. This directly contradicted everything she had been taught. According to the Academy curriculum, humans had forced the arachnids into total submission through threats of genocide. But the reality was that humans had possessed the means to wipe out the entire species and chose not to use it. Even more shocking was what she found next. After the conflict, humans had secretly provided medical aid to arachnid populations that had been caught in the crossfire. These humanitarian missions were classified at the highest level, hidden even from most of the human population. Zarak spent days piecing together the true history of the Meridian Crisis. When she finally emerged from the archives, she felt different, as if the galaxy she understood had suddenly shifted around her. She walked across the academy grounds, her mind racing. Near the reflection pools, she spotted Professor Divrak, her Centaurian supervisor, speaking with 2 academy officials she didn't recognize. When Divrak saw her, he quickly ended his conversation and approached. Student Zarak, you've missed 3 classes this week, he said, his tone unusually sharp. Your academic standing is at risk. I've been conducting research for my thesis, she explained. I've made some important discoveries about the Meridian Crisis that... The Meridian Crisis? Divrak's antennae stiffened. That's not your assigned topic. Your thesis concerns human expansion patterns, not specific conflicts. But the conflicts reveal the pattern, Zarak insisted. The common understanding of human behavior is flawed. They didn't rise to power through fear and intimidation. That's enough, Divrak interrupted. Your access to the Earth Historical database has been revoked. It was never properly authorized in the first place. Zarak's heart beat faster. But Professor Richards granted me access for independent study. Professor Richards exceeded his authority, Divrak said coldly. And you have strayed far from your approved research areas. The Academy takes these violations seriously. As Divrak walked away, Zarak felt a chill run through her body. The reaction seemed excessive for a simple academic issue. Why would her research into historical events cause such alarm? Back in her dormitory, Zarak found a message waiting on her personal terminal. It was from Professor Richards, sent through an encrypted channel. Your database access triggered security protocols. The message read, Be careful what you say and to whom. If you want to continue this research, find Elizabeth Winters. She was there for both conflicts and retired to New Terra last year. The truth matters, but so does your safety. Zarak sat in the dark, considering her options. She could abandon this line of inquiry, return to her approved research topics, and complete her degree without further incident. The sensible choice, the safe choice. Or she could follow this path wherever it led. The next morning, she requested leave from the academy for a family emergency, a minor deception that bought her 3 days. By evening, she was aboard a transport, ship bound for New Terra, the oldest human colony world outside their home system. As the ship entered slipspace, Zarak watched the stars blur around her. She thought about what she had learned so far. Humans had the power to destroy entire civilizations, but repeatedly chose restraint instead. They fought fiercely when attacked, but offered mercy when victorious. And for some reason, many species, including her own, preferred to believe they were feared rather than respected. Why? What purpose did this narrative serve, and who benefited from it? The question occupied her for the entire journey to New Terra. She didn't notice the communication sent from the Academy to the port authorities requesting her detention upon arrival. She didn't see the alert flags added to her travel documents. All she knew was that somewhere on New Terra, A human named Elizabeth Winters held answers that might change her understanding of galactic politics forever, and Zarek was determined to find her whatever the cost. As the transport ship approached New Terra's orbital stations, Zarek made final preparations. She had copied all her research onto secure data crystals hidden throughout her belongings. Whatever happened next, the truth she had discovered would not be easily erased. New Terra greeted Zarek with golden skies and rolling green hills. Unlike the sterile corridors of the Academy, this world felt alive, shaped by human hands over 2 centuries of colonization. She had expected more security at the spaceport, but her entry was surprisingly smooth. Either the Academy's alert hadn't reached New Terra yet, or someone had intervened on her behalf. Finding Elizabeth Winters proved more difficult than expected. The human woman had retired from diplomatic service and retreated from public life entirely. After 3 days of careful inquiries, Zarek finally obtained an address. A small house on the outskirts of Armstrong City, nestled against the foothills of a mountain range. The house was simple but elegant, with large windows facing the mountains. Zarek approached cautiously, aware that her blue skin and 4 eyes marked her clearly as non-human. She had barely reached the front path when the door opened. "I wondered how long it would take for someone to find me," said the elderly human woman standing in the doorway. Her hair was white, her face lined with age, but her eyes were sharp and clear. "You're from the Academy, I assume?" "My name is Zarek. I'm a student researching human history," she replied, her antennae twitching nervously. "Professor Alan Richards suggested I speak with you about the First Contact War and the Meridian Crisis." The woman's expression shifted slightly at the mention of Richards. "Alan sent you? Interesting. And what exactly are you researching?" "The truth," Zarek said simply. "The official histories don't match the evidence I've found. I need to understand why." Elizabeth Winters studied the young Centaurian for a long moment, then stepped aside. "Come in then, but I don't promise to answer all your questions." The interior of the house was filled with objects from across the galaxy, art pieces, cultural artifacts, and technological relics. On one wall hung a collection of medals and commendations. Zarek recognized the Distinguished Service Cross of the Human Alliance Fleet. "You served in the military?" she asked. "I was a diplomatic officer attached to the fleet," Winters corrected. "My job was to talk, not fight, though in those days the line often blurred." She gestured toward a sitting area. "Please make yourself comfortable." Zarek settled onto a chair designed to accommodate non-human physiologies. "The records show you were present during both the First Contact War and the Meridian Crisis." "I was," Winters confirmed. "Difficult times. Many mistakes were made on all sides." "But the humans won both conflicts," Zarek pressed. "You had the power to destroy your enemies completely. Everyone at the Academy teaches that other species obey humans because they fear what would happen if they didn't." Winters laughed, a sound that startled Zarek with its genuine warmth. "And you believe that?" "I did. Until I found classified records showing that humans repeatedly chose not to destroy enemies they could have eliminated. I need to understand why." The older woman was silent for a moment. Then she walked to a cabinet and removed a small data crystal. "What I'm about to show you isn't classified anymore, but it's not widely shared either." She inserted the crystal into a display unit, and a holographic image appeared above the table. It showed a younger Winters standing beside a stern-faced human man in a military uniform. "Admiral John Reeves," Winters explained. "He commanded our forces during the final push into Vorax territory. This was taken the day before he made the decision to offer peace terms instead of pressing the advantage." The image changed to show the Admiral addressing a room full of officers. Winters manipulated the controls and sound filled the room. "We have proven our strength," the Admiral was saying. "Now we must prove our wisdom. Throughout human history, we have learned this lesson repeatedly. Enemies utterly destroyed can never become allies, while enemies treated with dignity often become our strongest partners. We call this the Mercy Protocol." The recording ended, and Winters looked at Zarek. The Mercy Protocol wasn't just a moral stance. It was strategic. Humans learned through our own bloody history that cycles of vengeance ultimately destroy both sides. But why would other species pretend to fear humans when they actually respect this approach? Zarek asked. Fear creates temporary allies but permanent enemies, Winters said, echoing the Admiral's words. Mercy, when possible, creates the foundation for lasting peace, but mercy also creates obligation. Some find it easier to pretend they were intimidated, rather than acknowledge they were spared. She showed Zarek more recordings, diplomatic meetings, military briefings, peace negotiations. Each one revealed the same pattern. Humans using their strength not to dominate but to establish balanced relationships with former enemies. Several current members of the Galactic Council once stood on the brink of destruction by human forces, Winters explained. The Vorax, the Arachnids, even the Trilaxians. All were spared when they could have been destroyed. Their leaders know this, even if their populations don't. Zarek's antennae quivered with excitement. This changes everything I thought I knew about interspecies politics, which is precisely why many would prefer this history remain obscured, Winters said gravely. The narrative of human dominance through fear serves many interests, including some human ones. Not everyone agrees with the Mercy Protocol, even among my own people. Suddenly, a soft alarm sounded from a security panel near the door. Winters checked it and frowned. We have visitors. Academy security from the look of it. Seems your research has attracted unwanted attention. Zarek's hearts raced. They revoked my database access before I left. Professor Devrak warned me to stop investigating. Of course he did, Winters muttered. The Centaurians have particularly strong reasons to maintain the fear narrative. She gave Zarek a sharp look. Did you know your people were the first to experience the Mercy Protocol, before it even had that name? What? No, that's not possible. Centaurians and humans have never been at war. Not officially, Winters agreed, but there was an incident, nearly a century ago. A misunderstanding that nearly led to conflict. Human forces had developed a weapon that could have devastated your homeworld's atmospheric composition. Instead, they revealed the weapon's existence, and then publicly dismantled it as a gesture of good faith. Zarek stared at her in shock. Why isn't this in our histories? Ask your Professor Devrak, Winters suggested. Now we don't have much time. What do you intend to do with what you've learned? The young Centaurian thought quickly. The security team would take her back to the academy, where she would face disciplinary action, possibly expulsion. Her research would be confiscated, the truth buried once again. I need to make this public, she decided. The entire galaxy believes a lie about humans, about the balance of power. They should know the truth. Winters nodded, seeming pleased by the response. Then you'll need more than just my testimony. She removed the data crystal and handed it to Zarek. This contains everything I've shown you, plus more I've collected over the years, including records of the Centaurian incident. A firm knock sounded at the door. Winters calmly took Zarek's hand and led her toward the back of the house. There's a garden path that leads to the neighbor's property, she whispered. They're human, sympathetic to the truth. They'll help you reach the city. What about you? Zarek asked. I'll be fine, I still have friends in high places. Winters smiled. They can detain me, but they can't silence me. Not anymore. Now go. And remember, the galaxy remembers who showed restraint when they didn't. Have to. And so do those who were spared. As Zarek slipped out the back door, she clutched the data crystal tightly. She had come seeking answers about humanity's power in the galaxy. Instead, she had found something far more valuable, the truth about power itself. The news about Zarek's unauthorized departure from the Academy spread quickly through academic circles. By the time she returned to the Galactic Academy 2 weeks later, everyone knew her name. She had spent those weeks carefully reviewing the data crystal from Elizabeth Winters, organizing the evidence and preparing her case. Zarek chose to present her findings at the annual Graduate Symposium, an event attended by faculty, students, and visiting dignitaries from across the galaxy. She had officially registered her presentation under the innocuous title, Reassessing Human-Alien Relations in the Post-Contact Era. The Academy approved it without realizing what she actually planned to reveal. The presentation hall was nearly full when Zarek took her place at the podium. She spotted Professor Devrak in the front row, his antennae rigid with tension. Several rows back sat Professor Richards, who gave her the slightest nod of encouragement. Near the back of the room, diplomatic representatives from a dozen species watched with varying degrees of interest. "Thank you for attending my presentation," Zarek began, her voice steady despite her racing hearts. "My research has focused on humanity's rise to prominence in galactic affairs over the past 3 centuries. The accepted narrative is that humans achieved their status through military might and that other species cooperate with them, primarily out of fear." She paused, looking directly at Professor Devrak. "My findings suggest that this narrative is incomplete at best, and deliberately misleading at worst." A murmur ran through the audience. Devrak's skin darkened with anger. "Using declassified military records, diplomatic archives, and first-hand accounts, I have discovered a pattern in human military and diplomatic strategy that contradicts our standard teaching." Zarek activated the display behind her, showing footage from the First Contact War. In the conflict with the Vorax Empire, humans achieved complete tactical superiority. According to our textbooks, they forced the Vorax into submission through threats of planetary destruction. But the actual records show something different. The footage played, showing Captain Samantha Hayes ordering the withdrawal of human forces after securing only limited territorial concessions. Then came Admiral Reeves discussing the Mercy Protocol. "This was not an isolated incident," Zarek continued. "During the Meridian Crisis, despite losing 3 colonies and millions of lives to arachnid attacks, humans developed, but chose not to deploy a bioweapon that could have wiped out the entire species." She played the recording of the human leadership, council rejecting genocide in favor of limited military action. The Vorax ambassador stood abruptly and stormed out of the hall. Several other diplomats began whispering urgently to each other. Furthermore, classified records show that humans secretly provided medical aid to affected arachnid populations after the conflict, Zarek added, displaying evidence of the humanitarian missions. Professor Devrak rose from his seat. "This presentation is unauthorized and potentially dangerous to interspecies relations," he announced loudly. "I move that it be terminated immediately." The Academy Chancellor, who was overseeing the symposium, seemed unsure how to respond. "Student Zarek, is there a point to these historical revisions?" "The point," Zarek said firmly, "is that the foundation of current galactic politics is built on a misunderstanding. Humans aren't feared because they're ruthless. They're respected because they've repeatedly shown mercy when they had every reason not to." She activated the next display, showing a map of the current Galactic Council. Many council members, including the Vorax, the Arachnids, and the Trilaxians, once stood on the brink of destruction by human forces. All were spared. All later joined the council as allies rather than conquered subjects. One of the diplomats in the back stood up. "These are human lies," he said sharply, rewriting history to paint themselves as benevolent. "Actually," Zarek replied, "humans rarely publicize these incidents. It's other species who have promoted the narrative of human dominance through fear." She looked directly at Professor Devrak. "Including my own people." She displayed records of the previously undisclosed Centaurian incident, a diplomatic misunderstanding that nearly led to war before humans revealed and then dismantled a weapon that could have devastated her. "Homeworld, why isn't this taught in our histories?" she asked. "Why do Centaurians teach their children to fear humans when we owe them our gratitude?" The room erupted in angry voices. The Chancellor banged a gavel, calling for order. "Student Zarek, you will cease this presentation immediately. You have violated multiple Academy protocols and presented unverified claims as fact." "Unverified?" Zarek challenged. "Everything I've shown comes directly from official records and witness testimony. I can provide full source documentation." "That won't be necessary," said a deep voice from the back of the room. The crowd parted as a tall human male in a formal military uniform walked down the central aisle. His chest bore rows of medals and commendations. Zarek recognized him from Winter's recordings, General William Donovan, one of humanity's most decorated military leaders. General Donovan, the Chancellor said, clearly shocked. We weren't informed you would be attending. I wasn't planning to, the General replied. But when I heard about this student's research, I felt compelled to appear. He turned to face the audience. I can confirm that everything Student Zarek has presented is factually accurate. I personally participated in the final stages of the Meridian Crisis and can testify that we possessed the means to destroy the arachnid civilization completely. The room fell silent as the General continued. The Mercy Protocol isn't some secret doctrine. It's a principle drawn from human history. We learned through centuries of conflict on our homeworld that true power lies not in destruction, but in the choice to show restraint when holding the stronger position. He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of various diplomats. The universe remembers who showed restraint when they didn't have to, he said, and so do those who were spared. The words echoed Elizabeth Winter's parting message to Zarek so precisely that she wondered if this intervention had been planned all along. This student has done nothing wrong, the General concluded. She has simply uncovered a truth that many find uncomfortable, that cooperation built on mutual respect is stronger than obedience driven by fear. Humanity never sought to rule through intimidation. We sought to build partnerships that would outlast any single conflict or crisis. The Chancellor seemed at a loss for words. Professor Devrak's skin had paled to a light blue, his antennae drooping in what Zarek recognized as shame. Several of the diplomats were engaged in urgent communications with their governments. The symposium will take a brief recess, the Chancellor finally announced. Student Zarek, General Donovan, please remain for consultation with the academic board. As the audience filed out, Professor Richards approached Zarek. Well done, he said quietly. Though I had no idea Donovan would show up, Winters must have more influence than I realized. What happens now? Zarek asked, watching the diplomats hurry from the room. Now, the General said, joining their conversation, the real work begins. Changing narratives is never easy, especially when they've served so many interests for so long. He extended his hand to Zarek in the human gesture of respect. But truth has a power of its own, once it's spoken aloud. Zarek took the human's hand, aware that she had set in motion events that might reshape galactic politics forever. The fear narrative had served as a convenient explanation for human influence, simpler than acknowledging the complex web of obligation and respect created by repeated acts of mercy. As they waited for the academic board to convene, Zarek wondered if the galaxy was ready for this truth. But ready or not, it could no longer be contained. News of Zarek's presentation and General Donovan's confirmation spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Within days, the Galactic Academy found itself at the center of a diplomatic storm. The academic board had chosen not to punish Zarek, recognizing that her research, while controversial, was methodologically sound and properly documented. 3 weeks after the symposium, Zarek stood nervously outside the grand chamber of the Galactic Council. She had been summoned to present her findings directly to the assembled representatives of all major spacefaring species. The summons had come as a surprise. Students rarely addressed the council, but General Donovan had insisted on her presence. You started this, he had told her. You should be there when the truth is finally acknowledged. The massive doors swung open, and an attendant motioned for her to enter. The chamber was a vast circular room with delegate stations arranged in rising tiers. At the center stood a speaker's platform surrounded by holographic display fields. Hundreds of representatives from dozens of species filled the seats, their quiet conversations creating a low hum throughout the space. Zarek walked to the platform, aware of countless eyes following her progress. General Donovan and Elizabeth Winters were already seated in the human delegation section. Winters gave her an encouraging smile. The council chairperson, a tall Trilaxian with silvery skin, called the session to order. "We are gathered to address recent revelations regarding human diplomatic and military history," she announced. "These revelations challenge long-held assumptions about interspecies power dynamics and the foundation of our current political order." She gestured toward Zarek. "We will hear first from the student researcher whose work has prompted this extraordinary session." Taking a deep breath, Zarek began her presentation. She explained her initial discoveries about the First Contact War and the Meridian Crisis, showing the evidence she had gathered about the Mercy Protocol. Many council members listened intently, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "The pattern is clear," she concluded. "Throughout their expansion into the galaxy, humans have repeatedly achieved military superiority over potential adversaries, and just as repeatedly chosen restraint over destruction. This suggests that the common belief that humans maintain their position through fear is at best incomplete." The Vorax Emperor rose from his seat once she finished. The massive reptilian figure drew himself to his full height, intimidating even from a distance. "What this young researcher has uncovered is true," he said, his voice rumbling through the chamber. "Our histories teach that we surrendered to humans because we feared their power. The truth is more complex and more humbling. We surrendered because they offered us a path to peace that preserved our dignity when they could have offered only destruction." A murmur swept through the chamber. The Vorax Emperor was renowned for his pride. Such an admission was unprecedented. "My own grandfather led our forces during the war," he continued. "On his deathbed, he confessed that our histories had been adjusted, not to protect us from humans, but to protect us from shame. It was easier to claim we feared their brutality than to admit we were moved by their mercy." One by one, other representatives rose to speak. The Arachnid Queen acknowledged the secret medical aid humans had provided after the Meridian Crisis. The Trilaxian chairperson revealed that human scientists had shared vital technology that saved her species from a devastating plague. Even Professor Divrak stepped forward from the Centaurian delegation. "Our histories, too, have been incomplete," he admitted, unable to meet Zarek's eyes. "The incident that student Zarek uncovered did occur. Humans had developed a weapon that could have rendered our homeworld uninhabitable. They revealed its existence and then dismantled it before our observers as a gesture of trust. Our government chose to keep this secret, fearing it would undermine our standing if others knew how close we had come to destruction." As the revelations continued, Zarek realized that nearly every major species represented in the council had experienced some version of human mercy, and nearly everyone had chosen to obscure or reinterpret those experiences in their official histories. Finally, General Donovan addressed the council. "Humanity never sought to build an empire through fear," he said simply. "We learned through our own bloody history that true strength lies not in destroying enemies but in transforming them into allies. The Mercy Protocol wasn't created for moral reasons alone, though those matter deeply to us. It was created because mercy, strategically applied, builds stronger and more lasting peace than fear ever could." The chamber was silent when he finished. Then the chairperson spoke again. "It seems we have built our understanding of galactic politics on a foundation of convenient misinterpretations. The question before us now is, what do we do with this truth?" Elizabeth Winters rose from her seat. "Perhaps we begin by acknowledging that power takes many forms. The power to destroy is one kind. The power to spare, to show restraint when victory is certain, that is another kind entirely and possibly the greater of the two." The debate continued for hours, sometimes heated, sometimes reflective. Zarek watched as centuries of carefully maintained narratives unraveled before her eyes. By the time the session ended, the council had established a special committee to review and correct the historical record, not just regarding human actions, but all interspecies conflicts where similar adjustments might have occurred. As the ETR delegates filed out, Zarek found herself approached by the Vorax Emperor himself. The massive reptilian being towered over her, but his posture was respectful. "Your courage honors your species," he said formally. "Truth is often the first casualty." in conflicts between worlds. Restoring it may be our most important work. Later, outside the council chamber, Zarek stood with Winters and General Donovan, watching delegates from a dozen worlds deep in conversation, many speaking directly and honestly for perhaps the first time. "What happens now?" she asked. "Change," Winters replied. "Slow, difficult, but necessary change. Will it make a difference?" Zarek wondered. "Knowing that humans rule through mercy rather than fear." "We don't rule," Donovan corrected gently. "We never wanted to. We wanted partners, not subjects. Perhaps now we can finally have them." Zarek looked around at the diverse gathering of species, former enemies now cautiously reaching toward a new understanding. Her simple research project had unleashed something powerful, something that might reshape the galaxy's future. "In my studies of human history," she said thoughtfully, "I found one concept that seems to apply here. You call it truth and reconciliation. The idea that healing can only begin when the truth is acknowledged." Winters smiled. "You've learned our lessons well, perhaps better than we have ourselves sometimes." As they walked together toward the exit, Zarek reflected on her journey from confused student to catalyst for galactic change. She had set out to understand humanity's rise to power, only to discover something far more profound. That true power lay not in the ability to destroy, but in the choice to preserve. Behind them, the representatives of 100 worlds began the long process of re-examining not just their histories, but their futures. Futures built not on fear, but on the more challenging foundation of mutual respect. And perhaps Zarek thought that was the most human idea of all.